Unrest in Ethiopia's Amhara region, where Fano rebels who fought with government troops in Tigray 2 years ago are now battling the army. What's driving the conflict? And how's the government addressing the region's long-simmering grievances? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finighan. Conflict has returned once again to Ethiopia, this time in Amhara, the second largest region in the country. Many Amharas say that they've been sidelined by the government in Addis Ababa, which is dominated by the Oromo ethnic group. Local rebels in Amhara, known as Fano, helped the government in its 2-year war in neighbouring Tigray. Now, though, they've taken up arms against the military. The rebels have been, in turn, accused of trying to overthrow the government. The nation's intelligence chief condemned the group while calling on them to stop fighting.
It's a force of bandits creating a problem by being led with the intention and goal of dismantling the regional government and then going after the federal government. I call upon anyone included in this informal organisation of bandits to refrain from this path of self-destruction immediately and come to a peaceful solution. The National Defence Force is always the ultimate protection for the Constitution.
So who are the Fano and what do they want? It's a rebel group largely made up of local volunteer fighters from Amhara with a stated goal of defending the region and its people. As we mentioned, during the Tigray conflict, the Fano fought with government and Amhara regional forces and faced accusations of rights abuses. But Fano's relationship with the government deteriorated after Prime Minister Abi Ahmed's administration tried to bring the group under its control. Fano believes that this would leave Amhara vulnerable to attack by neighbouring regions. In April, violent protests broke out across Amhara after the Prime Minister ordered all paramilitary forces from Ethiopia's 11 regions be integrated into the police or national army. Officials insisted it was to bring unity, but protesters said that it would undermine Amhara's security. Before we begin with our guests, let's hear now from our correspondent Catherine Soy on what's behind the latest violence.
The government has declared a state of emergency since this fighting began. The fighting is between regional forces in Amhara region and this armed group called Fano. And what we're being told now is that the government has set up roadblocks. They have established curfews as well. And we also know that internet has been very, very slow, appears it has been blocked as well. So it's very difficult to get information coming out of that region, but we're told that the fighting is intensifying. Now, this group, Fano, is a group that is based in Amhara region. We know that it doesn't have formal structures, but then it has been there for a while. And we also know that during the conflict between the government or federal forces in Tigray and Amhara are neighbouring regions. So during that conflict of Tigray 2 years ago, Fano backed the government, and somehow the government provided weapons to Fano, and that is what the fight is about now, because the government wants to disarm these fighters, but they say no. We also know that some domestic flights have been cancelled because of what is going on, and the situation is very, very fluid, and we have also spoken to some people who live there who say that they are very fearful about what's going on. There's a lot of uncertainty and they want this resolved as quickly as possible. Catherine Soy, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Let's bring in our guests then. From Jazeera in Ethiopia, we're joined by Kamal, Hashi, Mohamoud, who's a member of the Ethiopian Parliament. From New York, we're joined by Yohannes, Woldemariam, an academic at Ethiopia, researcher specialising in the Horn of Africa. And from Charlotte, North Carolina, Tewodrose Tirfe, chairman and founding member of the Amhara Association of America. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you. Let's start with you, Tewodrose. Many people outside of Ethiopia may have interpreted Fano fighting alongside the National Army in Tigray as support for Prime Minister Abi Ahmed and his policies. Was that not the case?
No, that is not the case. This is really a complete misunderstanding and naivety of the Western observers of what's happening in Ethiopia. The Amhara people, the Fanos and the Amhara Regional Special Forces, when they were fighting in the war in northern Ethiopia, they were fighting to defend themselves because they were invaded by the Tigray People's Liberation Front on multiple occasions. So the fight in the war in northern Ethiopia by the Amhara people was mistaken as a support of Abi Ahmed, when in actuality, what it was a defense, a self-defense against the invading forces of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. But it's really critically important to give your audience some context. What we are witnessing right now in the Amhara region is a buildup of decades-long political marginalization, subjugation, and genocide being committed against the Amhara people by successive regimes in Ethiopia, starting out with the Derg regime, followed by the Tigray People's Liberation Front, and now by Abi Ahmed Ali and his Oromo Prosperity Party. Since Abi came to power, the atrocities against Amharas have escalated, in which thousands of Amharas have been massacred in his home region of Oromia, and over 1 million Amharas have been ethnically cleansed from that region, as admitted by his government. And now the same policy of targeting Amharas in Oromia has been implemented in Addis Ababa and Amhara region, where thousands of homes in Addis Ababa of non-Oromos, majority Amharas, have been destroyed, and over 20 mosques also destroyed, leaving hundreds of thousands of Amharas and non-Oromos to be homeless, many of them ethnically cleansed from Addis Ababa. Since Abi Ahmed came to power, this is what people have been witnessing. The current fighting between Abiy security forces and the Amhara people started when Abi Ahmed unilaterally, unconstitutionally, and without consultation with the Amhara people, sent his security forces to disarm and dissolve the Amhara region special forces, and started attacking the Fanos, while simultaneously arresting dozens of generals, politicians, human rights activists, and the youth. In the past week, over 4,000 Amharas in Addis Ababa have been arrested and placed in concentration camps. This is a war started by Abi Ahmed Ali against the Amhara people, and the Amhara people are just simply fighting for survival. Abi's military is using heavy artillery. Just quickly, it's important to know that. Yes.
Tewodrose, as we said at the beginning of the program, though, the Prime Minister ordered all paramilitary forces across the 11 regions of the country to be integrated into the police or the National Army. You're saying that Amhara has been singled out for particularly brutal treatment here.
Of course, and this has been the case for since he came into power. The Amhara people have been protesting and showing the discontent to Abi Ahmed before the war in northern Ethiopia, during the war in northern Ethiopia, and after the war in northern Ethiopia. As I said, the Amhara people have been primarily targeted by the Abiy regime since he came to power. That's why you are seeing right now the fight by the Amhara people against the Abiy and his security forces. Right now, Abiy's military is using artillery, tanks, and drones, and firing indiscriminately at cities, killing dozens of people. There are women being raped, and heritage sites are being destroyed. And what we're asking is for the international community to condemn this genocidal violence, targeting an entire ethnic group, and to hold Abiy and his government accountable.
Yohannes, in New York, Ethiopia, as we know, is a deeply ethnicized country. To what extent has Abi Ahmed made tensions worse? In the early days of his tenure, his words, including his inaugural address, in which he acknowledged past wrongs and his commitment to addressing identity and border concerns, were welcomed by people in Amhara. So why are people so dissatisfied with his leadership? What's gone wrong?
Let me address the initial speaker a little bit, because he alludes to the Amhara being marginalized historically. One can take the long view and the short view in this issue. And the long view actually is the direct opposite of what the speaker was saying. The Amhara were the privileged people in Ethiopia, and the Oromo people, although they are the majority, have been marginalized and oppressed, even unable to speak and develop their language. So it's a complete historical revisionism to present the Amhara as the victims. In the short run, I agree with some of the things he mentioned about the displacement of the Amhara, but this has also historical reasons, because a lot of these people were settled in the Oromia region during the Mengistu regime as part of his war strategy. And there were people there already. And so the people began to resent them from the very beginning because they were coming to their land. So this is a little bit of a twist in the historical facts that existed. And then in terms of Abi Ahmed has made things much worse. He is very much of an adventurer. The war he waged against the Tigrayan people, the genocide, really, that he committed against the Tigrayan people is something that has not been witnessed since Rwanda in Africa. And so within 5 years, he has polarized the country to the point where it's disintegrating. To begin with, Ethiopia is really was sustained by Western budgetary aid and political and military support. It's a very weak state to begin with. I know in US foreign policy, it's described as the anchor of the Horn of Africa. The more accurate description of Ethiopia is it's a destabilizing force in the Horn of Africa. It has been that ever since the end of World War II. And the beginning of Ethiopia itself is, most people don't realize this, but it was, Menelik, the emperor, of the founder of modern Ethiopia, was conquering southern Ethiopia, the Oromo region, and essentially colonizing along with, there wasn't just a European colonialism in Africa, there was an African against African colonialism. And Menelik was positioned historically in an ideal situation where he can get weapons from the Europeans by manipulating this power or that power and using the mythology that is the Orientalist mythology that deeply exists in the Western world. He was able to acquire weapons and conquer the southern lands. And so what we're seeing here is something that has been building up for over 100 years. And finally, things are coming to a boil, and we're witnessing now, a country on the verge of disintegration, is my view.
Kamal, Hashi, Mohamoud, what do you make of what you've heard from our two guests there? Is the country on the verge of disintegration?
I think the country is on the verge of the other way. The country is on the verge of a unity which has never been seen. But I see difference going on. I see instabilities happening, and maybe people having their own complaints. But let's be honest now. The war with the Tigray region now has ended. There is a stability. We're in a good situation. And now the stability needed in the Amhara region, hopefully through this state of emergency, will come to be on order. And speaking of earlier, what the other guest said, of blaming the prime minister directly targeting the Amhara people, I don't see an individual issue here. Let's be honest. So the request which came from the Amhara people, why I say Amhara people is, the Amhara people are represented by their own government, which they have elected, democratically and officially, represented by their own government. So the federal government is giving response to the Amhara people. So it's not the prime minister only being now the only actor here. I know he's the pioneer of the leadership, but it's the federal government which is trying to work for the safety and security of the Amhara community, so that the ongoing instability ends and the Amhara people will come back again to live their own normal life, business as usual, being in peace, being in the well-known agriculture, in other sector that the Amhara community are well-known for. So we have to see a lot of ways that this country is growing. We're having the greatest economy now and in East Africa, in a very good position in Southern Africa. So let's see those positive things that the country is, is achieving. But of course, situations like this happen. But we have to admit that the government is trying to make sure that the country comes together. That's why law enforcement measures like the one now happening in Amhara region are needed to make sure that there is only one, strong army, federal, defense force that will be, watching for the safety and security of the whole community in Ethiopia, instead of rebels, running here and there to disturb the ongoing situations. I would argue that the other way is happening.
All right,
and these little things will...
Let's bring in Tewodrose. He wants to get in here. Tewodrose?
Yeah, Adrian, as the only Amhara panelist here, if I can be given an opportunity to respond to both of these guests, I would really appreciate it, because there's really a lot of false claims that are being made here. Number one, in response to this member of parliament that's here, the Amhara people do not have their own representatives. They do not have their own government. In fact, the region is now under the state of emergency. The federal government is managing the Amhara region, and has been since April, by 5 federal agencies. The Amhara people have never elected their government. The source of instability in the region and in the country is Abi Ahmed Ali and the Oromo Prosperity Party. That is very clear. The war in the northern Ethiopia has never ended. The cessation of hostilities agreement that was signed between the TPLF and the Abi party was a flawed process that was not inclusive. It was exclusionary. It did not include all the stakeholders. It excluded the Amhara people and the Afar people from the process. And we had said at that time, we warned that there was not going to be peace in the country unless all the stakeholders are included. The Amhara people had their negotiation delegation ready to participate in the process. They were excluded. And as a result of that, we have another war started by Abi Ahmed again in the Amhara region. What we are asking for is an inclusive process that includes all the stakeholders, or else what we are seeing right now in Amhara region will broaden to other parts of Ethiopia and possibly engulf the entire Horn of Africa. The Fanos right now have taken over and are administering majority of Gojam. They are inside the capital of the Amhara region in Bahar Dar, battling against the Abyss military. Many parts of Gojam are now, Wollo and Ashua and also Gondar are now under the Fano administration. So this is one of the largest regions in the country under Fano right now, and the fighting is continuing. And what we're asking for is for the international stakeholders to quickly come in and condemn Abi Ahmed regime for the instability in the country, in the region, and to hold him and his government accountable, so we can move away from this regime into a civilian-led transitional government where we can have constitutional reform anchored on democracy, justice, and accountability, something that has escaped Ethiopians for decades.
Yohannes, I'll come to you in just a second. But first, Kamal, Hashi, Mohamoud, do you want to respond to what you've just heard?
I don't know where this comes, that the idea of mentioning that the Amhara people are excluded in any governmental decision-making process, and the fact, and also the idea of saying that the Amhara people has never elected, like we had an election, years ago where in Amhara region, even other parties have contested. Of course, they have had some seats in both the regional and the federal parliament. But the Prosperity Party, which is leading the country, has won the majority position, and many people of Amhara ethnicities who are Prosperity members have really won the election, represented their people, and are leading the region, and also representing their community in key positions in the federal government. So I see that like a delusion of saying, like the Amhara are not represented, they are excluded, unless we are saying that the Amhara people are only elected when like opposition parties are only leading the region, and I don't see that to be fair and a scientific way of looking at things. So let's be honest, they have their own representative. They are led by Amhara people, but of course there could be complaints. There could be things that they would say the government didn't do for us, which could be okay with any other regions or any other countries in the world, and that could be argued. But denying the fact that there has been a free and fair election, democratic election, which has been recognized by many international institutions and the whole Ethiopians as well, denying all that. I don't know where this argument is going.
Okay.
So I would appreciate if my other speaker at least accepts some facts and then build his arguments on that. But coming like, seriously and blindly, no election, nobody has been elected. I don't see that's going to be fair. And speaking of now, a lot of Fanos who are in the region who are fighting against the federal force, I think they should be advised by all leaders or influential people in the Amhara community, because through this fight, who's going to be affected is the Amhara community, which I really worry a lot about it. By both forces, be it the federal force, the National Defense Force, or the Fanos, they have to think that through this fight, who's going to be affected the most is the Amhara community, and they have to make sure that that this would be of very less casualties and discussions. It should really happen soon.
All right, let me bring in Yohannes. Yohannes, to what extent is Prime Minister Abi Ahmed an impossible... Okay. Hang on. Yeah, okay, Tewodrose, very quickly, if you can give me a 1-minute answer, I'd be very grateful.
Just very quickly, because it's important that your audience understands. This was a fake election. The government won over 90% of the returns. 90% of the parliament is seated by the Prosperity Party. So this wasn't a fair and a fair election that was held. There was arrest and intimidation of opposition political party members. In many parts of the country, the opposition political party members decided not to participate in the election because they were being persecuted by the government. So this is really pure lies and falsehood that the member of parliament is putting out there.
Yeah, Yohannes, was it a free and fair election? And to what extent is the Prime Minister in an impossible position here, in that he'll be criticised for whatever he does or doesn't do in Amhara? The people of Amhara, their grievances may be genuine, but are their demands reasonable?
I agree with the last speaker about the election. The election was completely fraudulent, and it was very ill-timed. It was done when it excluded the Tigrayan people completely. And even internally, it's when you're the only one running for a political election, you're going to win for sure. And that's what Abi did, basically. And the issue here is Abi came to power kind of riding on the back of the rebellion by the Oromo people, and to some extent by the Amhara people as well. And there was, this hope, this unreasonable hope, euphoria, initially, when he came to power. Even the Europeans and the Westerners gave him the Nobel Prize without really understanding who the man is. This is a very dangerous man. We're seeing that in 5 years, how dangerous situation he has created. Ethiopia is a very difficult place to govern, even for the most seasoned and sophisticated and well-meaning politician. But here we have a very power-hungry person. I don't know if you've heard, but he's building a palace for himself that costs about $10 billion, even when the Ethiopian people are starving and the economic situation is unbearable. He counts on Western aid. He counts on money from the outside, from the Middle East, from all kinds of places in order to build a country. And also, it's with regards to the Amhara, historically, there is no dispute that they have been the privileged people in Ethiopia. Anybody can tell you this. Even some honest Amharas can tell you this. But when Abi Ahmed came to power, they expected him to be their puppet, basically. Abi is not about anybody. He's not for the Oromo. He's not for the Amhara. He's not for anybody. Abi is for himself. He's intoxicated with power, and he wants to stay in power at any cost. And that's why he didn't have any problem with 1 million people dying, and he's acting like everything is, like he hasn't done anything. The international community is not holding him on track again. And he is even talking about invading a neighboring country to annex parts of that other country. And this is just preposterous.
Time is against us, gentlemen. We've got very little time left. So a brief answer from you first, Kamal, before I ask you another question here. How do you respond to that Abi Ahmed is a power-hungry, dangerous man?
I would say absolutely no. And the the fact that my other panelists are only putting the idea only against the prime minister, who's a single person in the whole system of the government, is baseless and reckless. We have very strong government led by party. I would appreciate if the argument was to look at the party system, how things are going, but pulling all things together against only the prime minister, I think looks like as if some groups are backed there to only insult or defame the prime minister, while they see practically what's happening, all the initiatives and the legacy the prime minister is leaving behind in Ethiopia since he has come, despite that the instabilities are going in the country and all the contribution he's making to make sure this instability ends. So I only see some hatred and inside hatred against the prime minister. I don't know the reason why they really hate him that much. That's only how I see all the ideas coming around are only out of hatred against the prime minister. I don't even see any interest that comes out of the need or the interest for the community in Amhara region. Had they been interested with the safety of the community, I would believe that they would use this time to speak of making sure that this war ends, making sure that this situation ends very peacefully and a very low casualty for the Amhara community in Amhara region.
Okay.
But all the arguments around are saying
Kamal.
He's building a palace.
Right.
He's going to rage war in the neighboring country. What's the proof?
Okay.
I'm
sorry, Kamal, I'm going to have to interrupt you. We're almost out of time. But Yohannes, a very quick answer from you as well, if we can, please.
If I can respond to Yohannes,
yes, okay.
Because there were some false allegations, Adrian, made about the Amhara people by Yohannes.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Yeah. Number one, the Amhara people have not been privileged historically. That is false, and that is a lie that people are putting out there to justify attacks against Amharas. Earlier, he has said that the Amharas were settled into Oromia by the Mengistu regime, that there was resentment, and he justified the ethnic cleansing of Amharas, and these people were innocent people. That is really ridiculous. It should be a statement that should be condemned.
Okay, look, you can't say lie there. Okay, it's that's an opinion that at the moment I can't substantiate here. But look, we're almost out of time. Yohannes, 30 seconds. Is this conflict going to be brought under control without further bloodshed, or is it set to escalate? Just answer the question, please, as quickly as you can.
This conflict is set to escalate because it is a people's resistance, and it's engulfed the entire region.
Yohannes?
May I interject? Yes, okay. The fact that the Amhara were settled in the Oromia region and that they were privileged is not a dispute.
Just answer the question. Is this conflict set to escalate?
Oh, no doubt. This is a country on the verge of disintegration. This is not a country, if it's going to be salvaged, it would be a miracle.
Yeah. And Kamal, are you confident this conflict can be brought under control?
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole point of this state of emergency is to put it under control, because rebels in the Amhara region are doing whatever they want with their own interests, and the region cannot control this. So it came a demand, and hopefully it will end soon. But it needs a lot of effort, a lot of discussion. And I ask everybody to contribute this to come into control, even by other panelists.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid we're going to have to end it. Many thanks indeed for taking part in the programme today. I really do appreciate it. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget you can see the programme again at any time by going to the website at aljazeera.com. For further discussion, join us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can join the conversation on Twitter, our handle at AJ Inside Story. From me, Adrian, Finighan, and the crew here in Doha. We'll see you again. Bye for now.